5 days, Janine, 5!
Somebody help me!
Something's happened. Something's happened.
Your movie is about communication, or to be more precise, miscommunication between parents and their children, lovers, people and their own egos. What do you think is important? Why do you think it's important to make a movie about miscommunications that people have in their lives?
Ramona?
Ramona.
This is one of those where we just throw to whoever the appropriate person. I think absolutely this movie is definitely about relationships between different people and all those things that you think are happening, which maybe aren't happening or aren't communicated as well. I really wanted to take a look at what different stages of those relationships were. Relationships between a couple who've been married for many years and are kind of transitioning into this new phase of their relationship where their only child is now left the nest, so to speak, and them trying to figure out how to become a couple again without her in their lives. And with our detective character, obviously he's going through another interesting life transition in terms of becoming a father and trying to figure out what he's able to do and not do with that, and his relationship with his ex-girlfriend and the woman he loves, and also with the people at his work, and just trying to become the best detective he can. And then obviously our Cara character is she's a young woman who's decided she's going to go out into the world and make all these decisions, and there's always that interesting thing when you're 19 years old and you're trying to figure out how much to tell your parents and how much to hold back from your parents, and what all those those new rules are when you're in that stage of your life. So yeah,
just coming of age sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
What compelled you to come together and create a story with this triple twist?
Well, originally, I'll just say sort of part one of that is that the script originally wasn't necessarily written with 3 directors in mind. It was to be a 3-part story with those 3 different points of view, and it was much later in the process that sort of when Glenn came on to the project, deciding what's the coolest way to tackle that, and coming up with a 3-director thing was kind of the way to not only tell the story as it was on the page, but to give it that extra element.
And the thing we really liked about this script was it's not an anthology, so it's not like we put together 3 shorts by different directors that have nothing to do with each other. This is the same story. Mm-hmm. And so it was an opportunity to give each of the directors a way to put a stamp on the film and make it their film while telling the same story from a different point of view.
Right.
And then at the genesis of that, we were really looking for an opportunity for those directors to have the opportunity to tell a story, to go from something that wasn't a short before their first feature, so they had an opportunity to kind of bridge that gap and find a project in the middle that was going to kind of elevate the kind of material they were working on, the budget levels they were working at, all on a route to doing bigger and better things later in their career.
Right.
Mom, I can't tonight. I have midterms.
You know what? I'll come to dinner. Just don't wait up for me, okay? No promises.
She's busy. Working, studying.
Oh, well, she should have called if she was going to change her plans.
Need to give her some space.
Where and when did you guys fall in love with film?
I'm probably first, so I'll go first. I'm the oldest. I was 9 years old in the summer of 1977, and my dad came home one day and said, "Grab your friends, we're going to see a movie." And we sat in the back right-hand portion of the Gravenhurst Movie Theatre in Muskoka, Ontario, and the movie was Star Wars. And then from that moment on, I was all in on movies. Yeah.
I think I've always loved movies, but I remember when I was a kid, my parents and I moved to a new neighborhood, and I was very upset. We went to the movies and we saw E.T. Nice. And that was kind of like, I felt very akin to what was going on there, because I was a little boy who was going through stuff, and I was a little girl going through stuff, and I kind of connected, and yeah, good movie.
And you went to film school.
Yes.
And pretty much you felt like you can do it because you saw the way the story was told, and you felt like you could do it.
I was supposed to be a doctor. So
really?
I did my degree in biochemistry. I was on the pre-med track, but I always loved movies. And so in university I took a film class, and we analyzed The Godfather. And when I saw behind the scenes and the form and how you could construct a scene and shot design, I was like, I have to do this. So I finished my degree, but then pursued film after that and went to film school.
Yeah, I don't really know when. I've always loved movies. I guess my absolute favorite movie is Jaws, and I remember seeing that in the drive-in. It was a double bill with Swiss Family Robinson, and my mom and dad just thought that I was going to fall asleep after Swiss Family Robinson. Jokes on them. And I love the movie so much that I wanted to dedicate my life to becoming a marine biologist. And then I wanted to be a cop because I wanted to save the world from sharks.
Right. Marine biologist isn't supposed to be like the opposite. You're supposed to be terrified of sharks and
it was. I'm still. Well, I love them, but they're beautiful, misunderstood creatures.
Deeply misunderstood.
Yeah. Anyway, so that through the years when Jaws played on television, I had noticed that they would be playing different scenes that weren't in the movie when I originally saw it, and for some reason I remembered that, and just understanding that these stories had could expand and that there was some kind of craftsmanship behind it. I just started to understand that, and then I realized that other movies that I liked or that I was drawn to were all directed by the same person, and then I wanted to know what a director does. And still trying to figure that out, but that's kind of where it started from for me.
I guess for me, I've also always loved movies, but I think the earliest I can trace it back to was seeing Who Framed Roger Rabbit when I was I think 7, and that was the first time that I really I thought I understood what movies were. Like I just you sort of just take what people show you and give you, and that kind of broke my little mind and made me start thinking about how is this happening?
Right.
Mixing animation with film.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was sort of just fascinated at that point. It was like a really magical film to see at that age.
So film is tough and puts you through a lot and has lots of setbacks, and sometimes you feel defeated. Was there ever moments when you fell out of love with film and you felt like you're just throwing the towel in and you're done with it?
Oof.
Bye.
Yeah.
This morning.
I don't know. That's a tough one because I think the very nature of wanting to make movies is a constant wrestle with that particular question, because we all know that it's a business, but we're all in it because there was a spark of imagination that was delivered to us in a theater. With the sound of the projector and the smell of the popcorn. So we all have this love that from childhood that we're constantly wanting to repeat. I would assume, at least it is for me, and this love that you want to pass on, particularly for me now that I'm a parent. It's very it's a part of me that I want to share with my children. But then it's the business that I don't understand, and I don't know if that's just because of how I've chosen to put on my the blinders and trying to make movies. But yeah, it's tough, and it's a day-to-day grind. Sometimes you have to wake up saying, "Well, I'm just going to try it again today, and see what happens." So yeah, it's tough, but I gotta tell you, from my experience at least, I've been lucky enough, both with short films, like No Man's Land, or with our feature, Home by Myself with You, and even this movie, Ordinary Days, I've had the privilege of hearing audience interaction while watching the movie, and it's moments like that, or it's when somebody is affected by something that you've made, that kind of has to keep you going for the next 5 years before or 2 years while you're making your next thing.
I guess like a few years ago, because I was really trying to make my first feature. I made a few shorts, and I really wanted to make a long-form film, and just had a few features in development, and just couldn't get financing, and on the advice of my agent, I'd explored television. And had a lot more success there. And then really Ordinary Days kind of came in, which was a nice bridge to making my first feature, which hopefully I will do after this. But yeah, and that was kind of really an encouraging process, because I was part of a feature but had not yet done one on my own. So it was a nice stepping stone. I don't know. I come more from a writer perspective than potentially a director, and I've been very lucky to work on a lot of different kinds of projects in television and long form. And as a writer, you can always write, you know, like I think that's always, for the directors, it's much more challenging because you have to have all these elements come together so that you can do the thing you want to do, which is be on set and work with, you know, all the pieces of production. But as a writer, I can just go write anytime, and I can write anything I want to. And, you know, I've been lucky that those things have been produced and they've been picked up, and I've been able to do that. But, you know, I think there's a slight privilege in being a writer because you can just kind of do it. And for me, the process of writing is really what I love.
Right.
Everything else is, you know, exciting and amazing and, you know, challenging and wonderful. But that's, for me, that's me and my keyboard and my laptop doing the thing. You just got to keep doing it. Like, you know, you got to have faith that your stories have value and that there's other people that will be drawn to them and want to help you and support you. And you know, I think when you have a team like this or on any project that everyone's got on the same page to do it, you can make things happen. And you just need, you know, you need your champions and your support systems, and hopefully that will continue.
Right.
Well, I'll add to this that I think that the thing that discourages most people from moving into feature films is how difficult it is to get them made. Mm-hmm. It isn't that there are great scripts out there. There are great scripts out there. There isn't that there's great talent out there. But putting that chain of people together is difficult. Right. And then finding all the sources of financing at the exact same time is difficult.
For a month.
And then getting production to work is difficult. It's just endless challenges that you have to face. Mm-hmm. And I think that the thing that was nice about our film, Ordinary Days, was we just decided to make it. It was, we wanted to find a way to be proactive in the feature film world and produce something that was going to be simple to do, where we could eliminate all of the worries about financing and all of the things. And Telefilm Canada was a very big help in that and the programs they have, and we found a program that worked well for the film, and we found the right directors. And in that sense, you know, I think Ordinary Days for me was an uplifting experience because we didn't have all of those challenges that so many feature films go through. And I think Brian and I, as producers, it's something we want to pursue, is trying to find easier ways to get movies made so that the challenges aren't just getting it made, the challenges are making great creative and having success with that. Mm-hmm. And so I think a lot of people do get discouraged because the puzzle piecing is so hard. But if we can succeed at making those puzzles easier with fewer pieces in a way, then I think it'll become a much more uplifting and encouraging place for people to be.
19-year-old college girl. Been out of touch since Friday.
What is it? What's happening here?
Nothing. It's nothing. There is a detective here to ask us some questions. That's all.
So in the Ordinary Days, is there a decision that you perhaps made on the fly? Something like writing in a new character or nixing the location on the date, like an hour before, just rewriting totally a page. And was that a right decision to do?
I don't know that we necessarily rewrote things on the fly, but I mean, you two can probably speak to that a bit more due to the sort of challenges production-wise. I know there was lots of.
Well, I just remember we were setting up try to keep this as politically correct as possible. We were setting up a shot to introduce a character, and there was an element in it that involved a dog. And the idea was the dog was going to run from one place and break through the frame and run up to main character, a character, and introduce the character. And the dog decided to run away. And
it was not a trained film dog.
And so the dog ran away, and I remember being on set not knowing that the dog ran away. And you know we're ready, and the camera's ready and everything, and I'm like, okay, so what are we waiting for? It's like, where's the dog? Where's the dog? And Brian walks up to me and he says, yeah, the dog ran away. I'm like, okay, so when's the dog coming back? It's like, I don't know. It's like, I need to have the dog today.
He's a pigeon.
Anyway, so on that, because the way that the script fell, the following scenes had the dog, and the dog has plot devices that link to Renuka's section and all that. So it's like that was to transition, the dog character. Anyways, so just right there, there's everyone waiting, and I couldn't get to a phone to call Ramona and say, what are we going to do with this script? And so I just said, okay, well, we're shooting. We're going to shoot right now. And I remember the AD came up to me and just gave me a big hug. And then we shot the scene, and I just like, the dog, we're going to cut to the dog inside the house. That's the transition between this scene and the next scene. We'll cut from this.
As long as he comes back.
Yeah, as long as he comes back.
He comes back.
Well, we shot the inside of the house the next day.
Right.
The dog came back.
And the dog came back. It's a happy ending. The dog's amazing. the dog deserves an Academy Award.
Yeah.
Is there any other challenges you faced while making Ordinary Dates other than obviously the dog issues?
I would actually credit everybody. I mean, one of the things that we tried to instill on the production early on was that pre-production was free. The money's just rolling out the door in production, but generally speaking, as much pre-production as you can do, the better. And so Brian was great at really coordinating a lot of the departments and a lot of the directors. We had a lot of people to coordinate, making sure that everyone went into their days very well prepped. And so even when something like the dog comes up, it doesn't become this big giant catastrophe because you've got everything so well prepped going in. And I think in the world of low budget filmmaking, I think that's key. Films can kind of go off the rails if they're not well prepped, and if you don't have the money to kind of handle that, then you're in big trouble. But I think the team did an amazing job of just going into every day knowing exactly what needed to happen, and whenever there was a little blip, it was able to be handled easily because the rest of the day was so well handled.
Right. And sort of to segue into the next question, so rising in film industry is obviously hard and it can take time. So which advice would you give to the aspiring filmmakers other than pre-production?
Oof. I mean, I think that it's important to make films at different budget levels. It's important to make films at, like for $10,000 if you have $10,000. It's important to make a movie for $100 if you can. So I would say that instead of zeroing in on like an idea of making a film for a lot of money and not doing anything until you can get there, just be making things. Like, if the story works for less money, then make it for less money. Yeah, that's what I would suggest.
I would say making movies is really hard. A lot of challenges, as we've discussed. So one thing that you can kind of control are the people who you work with. So always work with nice people, and that was what this team was. And so it was every day was fun, collaborative, and that goes a long way when things get challenging.
I think for younger writers, I would suggest not falling in love with your one idea that you must absolutely only ever do. I think it's really important to write a range of things, and particularly in Canada for young writers to be writing TV as well as features, as well as short stories, as well as whatever you can put your energy into, and coming to the table with lots of things, not just that one idea. I think it's dangerous to fall in love with one idea and get, and only think that's the only thing you can ever do. And I think it's, writing as much as possible.
For a filmmaker coming into it or just starting out, it's a lot different now than it was when I was starting out, and so my advice would be that that you don't wait for somebody to help you see start your vision. The best advice that I saw online was Spike Lee, and his advice to first-time filmmakers is to write your own script. Because it's kind of akin to what Ramona just said with your idea is, if you want to be a filmmaker, the only way that you can be a filmmaker is by making films, and so you just have to get out there and you have to write. And particularly with your first feature film, if you write it to yourself, your odds of making it, I think, are a lot more because you're in the passion zone. Might not be a great movie, but it doesn't matter because once you have your first feature film, it unlocks a door to making another one. Also, something that no one ever told me is once you've made your first feature film, understand that your second feature film is like making a first feature film, and and don't think that it isn't, because it is, and then you know, just meaning that a second feature film takes as much passion and want to make as a first feature film. First feature film doesn't get you to,
doesn't guarantee you anything
at all. Yeah.
Cara is dating a student of mine, Ollie Santos.
Is this connected to that boy or what?
I don't know anything.
There she is.
Yeah, there she is.
Mr. Anderton, you were the last one to see her alive, so...
How long did you follow her?
I didn't follow her.
This is the same case.
Not yet.
Ordinary Days is booming right now in Whistler, and it's really exciting. And I just wanted to know what is up next for you guys, for your crew, and for Ordinary Days, of course. Is there anything coming?
So Ordinary Days, we are just working on all of that now. We were fortunate enough to be able to make this film, and going back to the simplicity point we made earlier, we made this film with no partners. It was just Telefilm and us who made it, and so now we're looking for our distribution partners and all of our sales partners around the world, and Whistler will be a big part of that for us. And then I think we all have plans to do additional projects, and I'll let them speak to it, but for Relay Station and See Daylight, which is Brian, we're already planning on what the next films are going to be, and hopefully continue to do this on a very regular basis, and keeping it as simple as possible so that we can make as many as possible.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's going to be writing the next one, which is, you know, already happened, and hopefully there'll be some opportunity to make another feature. You know, the writers always talk about stacking projects, so even though this was being shot last year and we've been in post-production and sending it out to festivals, I've been working on the next script. You know, you got to get ahead of that train in a way so that you can continue making them, so just keep writing.
Yeah, same, trying to write another feature and develop more TV shows and direct more TV.
I'm going to learn the ukulele.
Sweet.
Yeah,
very good.
Yeah.
That's cool. For me, it's just there's so many good emerging filmmakers in Canada that are all over the place, and I'm just trying to connect with as many as possible, and offering to look at whatever projects they have. If they need eyes on scripts or whatever, I'm open to looking at them, and then working with Glenn on the next thing.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, guys, for taking the time to talk to eBOSS Canada. It was a great pleasure having you, and I hope you will enjoy Whistler Festival until you are here.
Thanks
Thank you so much.